Hello guys and welcome back. This is David here at CEG and we're going to do a button class all about the buttons. So we're going to go over the buys, the direct lays, the ons and offs, anything to do with a button. Why use a button, how you use the button, if you need buttons, that kind of thing. If you got a big coat. Now this isn't buttons you put on coats, by the way. These are these buttons. Buttons, buttons, buttons. What do you got here? You stole my buttons? What's going on? What's going on with the lack of buttons? Here we go. Yeah, I need more buttons. I need some off and on buttons. All right. Okay. So first of all, depending upon what casino you go to, you'll be dealing with different buttons. The other buttons that aren't here per se are the money buttons. Oh, let's do that first. Let's get that out of the way. Okay. So here's all these buttons. We'll work with these later. Okay. So there's two types of buttons, by the way. There's buttons that the floor supervisor or the box person will use to track the soft drop of the game. So by that means all the money that goes into the box, they actually keep track. So you'll see them move these little lammers that represent X amount of dollars, starting with $20 bills. So 20, once they get to 20, 4 of those goes to 100, so forth and so on. And they keep feeding it so they have an idea. If the supervisor or shift boss comes up and say, hey, what's the drop on your game? I got 2,000 in the can. They look at the bank. Maybe there's 2,000 missing. Table's even. You know what I mean? So they do keep count or a soft count throughout the shift, right? Okay. The other type of button you have is something like this, okay, which would stand for some type of marker or credit, right? So if you have a supervisor that comes up to the game, throws one of these in, that's usually a sign that you're going to be putting out some checks here in a minute, right? So the next part of this process is whether or not they have to sign first. So sometimes the supervisor, the minute they throw that button, boom. By the way, you'll pretty much know that guy or that girl who comes up to the game, $5,000, you'll get ready, you know, whatever the case is, cut it out. They want it a certain way. You know, there's different protocols for dealing with those people, of course. Some like you to talk to them, others not so much. Your box person will tell you exactly how they want the money. So it kind of depends. On a $5,000 player, not so big deal. But if you start getting into some big play with $100,000 buy-ins, you'll very, very often be prompted as to kind of how that person wants the money, what they're going to play, this kind of thing. And then I'm going to get over this in just a second because this is not a big deal. Your casino will sort of walk you through the process for credit and markers, you know. So sometimes you're not allowed to put out the money until they sign. Other times it's okay. They'll throw this while they're working on the paperwork. Then they'll come over later. They'll sign for it. This kind of thing. Okay. Whatever you do, make sure that when they'll have you sign for it as the dealer will sign for it to acknowledge that you pushed out the money. Make sure that it's right. Don't sign anything that you don't, 100% commit to, because you will get either written up for it if it's wrong or, suspended, this kind of thing. Okay. All right. Next up, buttons. Okay, let's go over the other buttons. So you'll see these. These aren't so much button as they are lammers. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the next buttons we have is a few buttons in the game: off, buys, lays. Those are kind of the off and on, and then buys and lays. So some casinos where you have a lot of buy action, you'll see these buttons that have buy on both sides. And then nowadays, though, a lot of casinos have done those buttons in for the buy and lay. So either one, just make sure that you have the right side up. You know what I mean? But if casinos where you do a lot of buy action, a lot of 4s and 10s, this kind of thing, you're going to want to use just straight up buy. Because if, God forbid, it gets knocked off and then it ends up on the other side and now you have a lay on the side, you follow? So anyways, all right. But we're going to go with, there's a few things we're going to go over in terms of how the buttons are used and what you do with. The first thing we're going to do is the ons and offs, okay? So as we know, this is off. The bets here, by default, are off. So what bets are off? Okay, on the come out roll. All right. Please explain what 2 bets are off on the come out roll by default. Place bets
and the odds.
and the odds. Yes. Yep. So if a 7 should roll now, working bets had action, save the odds, right? So the flat bet is always a contract bet. Flat bet. The flat bet is the same as this bet. Stuck, right? So it's always working. It's always an action contract bet with the casino. So anytime there's a flat bet, right? Contract bet. The odds, not so much. So the player though can determine whether they want these odds on or off. By default, they're off. Default status always follows the puck. Puck's off, bets are off. Puck's on, bets are on, okay? So if someone wants to go against the puck, that's where you need to add a button to signify, I want my bets working. Now, I don't ask anybody if they want their bets working. I always play default, okay? You never go out there and like prod people, hey, would you like your odds working? You know, that's not a thing. However, if a customer comes up to you and says, I want all my odds working, right? And then the next time around on a come out roll, they haven't said something, I'll ask them, hey, would you like your odds working again? Because now I know they wanted their odds working the first time. You follow? And that's just customer service. But it's not, you as a dealer, that's not your job. The customer runs this type of action, whether they want it on or off, okay? So, you know, if they want to go against the default, it's up to them to say something, all right? Now, if they tell you, I would like my come bets to always work, that's a contract bet. Now you have to always, that's up to you now. Once you accept that bet, they say I want my odds, or I want my place bets to always work. Now you need to make sure, so here's what I do, by the way. I will leave these buttons out on the table. If I know I have someone, so let's say for example, this person wants their come bet odds always working. I will literally, once we come out, let's say we come out of the point of 6, okay? I will take this button off, obviously, you don't need it anymore, but I will leave it here for myself to remind myself that I have someone with a contract bet who wants odds working or place bets or whatever the case is, all right? Some casinos won't let you leave this on the table, by the way, all right? So you got to be mindful of that because they want this whole, so everything has to be clear. If that's the case, then wherever you have your buttons, just make sure you remember, okay? Because once, go ahead.
Sometimes I put it on the box.
Or put on the puck, yep, good, yep. No, you can also put on the puck, yep, fantastic. And again, that's a very good idea, actually, that's very good. I do that a lot as well, all right? Because they have a contract bet with you, you book that bet. So if you're coming out, okay, and a 7 is rolled, you know, they're gonna lose all that, right? Because the contract bet and the odds are working. But make sure that if the 9 comes out, okay, make sure that if you didn't have the button on it, put the button on it. Okay, let the camera know, all right, if you can. A lot of people will just go ahead and pay that, which is fine in most cases, but again, the camera can't hear what you're doing, right? If you forget this, by doing this, it tells everybody upstairs, hey, I just forgot to put the button on, now take the button off and pay it, you follow? Whenever possible, I always go the long route, so that I think of in terms of, okay, what the camera's gonna see, so everybody's on the same page, you follow? All right, so.
It's not game protection, it's ass protection.
It literally is ass protection. Yeah, it's the next level of game protection. In most places, if you've been a dealer for a while and you go like this, now here's what happens, right? If you just go like this, and now you pay this bet like this, it looks like you've overpaid. You should have only paid in most cases, right? They're gonna think maybe you should have paid it like this. That's what it should look like. You follow? Because you're only paying the flat bet. So this is why, even if I forget and I go, oh crap, I'll go like this. So that way, at least, if they roll it back, they can see I just forgot the button. I'm letting them know I forgot the button, okay? All right. So now let's go, how these buttons work is, all right, let's do a few things here. Okay, here we have someone across, okay? Here we have someone just on the outside. I'm just using single bets to make it easy for demonstration purposes. All right. Now I'm gonna set up somebody on the back with, let's say, actually I'm going to set up a couple different bets. So let's say here, and then let's say I have somebody on the 5, okay. And then, all right, so I'm going to be very specific, okay. 3, 2, this guy's back here. All right, so you can see what we got going. And now I'm going to do, all right, okay. Couple different scenarios, okay, working with on buttons and off. All right, I'm gonna need some more. Do you have some more? Oh, I got plenty right here. Never mind. Okay, so here's how the buttons work. So for example, very easy. This is the number 1 player. This is the number 3. This is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that way we're gonna clearly demark like where everybody is. The number 1 player decides they want their place bets working. So we're gonna go ahead and we put the on button closest to the box person, signifying that all their place bets work, okay? Now, however, let's say this person wants to be difficult and says, I only want my outside numbers working, okay? I only want my outside numbers working, right? They only want the 4, 5, 9, and 10. There's only one thing I'm gonna do this because I'm gonna need a whole bunch of buttons. Otherwise, I will literally hand them their 6 and 8 back, and then just leave that on. Boom, outside numbers are working. The only other way to do this is
Put 2 off buttons.
yes, 2 off buttons. You see, or let's say for example, okay, the person wants I want the 4 5 working. But I want my 6, 8, and 9 work off, and I want my 10 working.
So you
So
put
you
on
can
on
do
10?
you can do something like this realistically. So the on button 4, 5 working, the off starts the off 6, 8, 9, and then back on the 10. Okay. All right. I will go ahead.
You have to let the box.
And yeah, you gotta let everybody know. You gotta let you call it into your mother, your grandparents,
Yeah.
let everybody know that this guy be like,
In
hey,
this case.
I got a stroke around the table, and yeah, I'm gonna get through it. So, whenever possible, if this starts happening, I will just start handing bets off. You want it off? Here's off. Off is really off. Here you go, right in your rack. That's about as off as you can get it. That way, it makes everything easier. So, like literally in this kind of scenario, I'd be like, listen, what numbers would you like working? I want the 4, 6, and 10 working. Okay, 5, 8, and 9 are gonna come down. You know what I mean? That way there's no confusion. You want to put them back? Put them back.
They take shots.
Because that's a shot. It's just silliness, okay? Now, one thing that's not a shot.
But if they say they don't want to, they want it over there, then you got to put the bottoms, right?
So let's say, for example,
That's a shot.
that's a shot too. If someone is really being difficult at making your life where you just it becomes really difficult and convoluted to keep track of their stuff, I'm gonna talk to my box person and have my box person resolve the issue. Because at some point it just becomes so hard. You're gonna make it's forcing you to make a mistake, especially if you have a lot of other players in play. You know what I'm saying? There's no way you can keep track of all that. You know what I mean? But yes, I mean customer service first. Technically, you can do that. But it becomes, difficult to manage. You know what I mean?